Hi, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new, I'm Olivia. This is Mystery of the Month, where I dive into an unexplained event or an unsolved case. Today, I'm going to be exploring the mystery of Juan Pedro Martínez Gómez, what Interpol called Europe's strangest disappearance. And it all began on June 24th, 1986, on a winding mountain road in the north of Spain. Andres Martínez was a truck driver living in southern Spain. He occasionally took his wife Carmen Gómez and their 10-year-old son Juan Pedro along with him on trips. As evening approached on the 24th, Andres, along with his family, picked up the truck in Cartagena at 7 p.m. and they began making their way north. The trip seemed to start out normal enough. The last confirmed sighting of the three occurred around 5:30 a.m. on the morning of June 25th. When Andres and Carmen bought coffee for themselves and a pastry and some milk for Juan Pedro. After getting back on the road, the family was driving through the Sierra Mountains around 6 a.m. It's at this point Andres' driving became erratic. He was speeding down the mountain at 140 kilometers per hour, which is equivalent to 85 miles per hour, which if you've ever driven down a mountain road, you know that is insanely fast. He overtook the first truck without incident. Then Andres attempted to pass a second truck and ripped off its mirror. Then he rear-ends a third truck and forces it off the road before finally crashing head-on with a truck that had come from the opposite direction. The impact caused the truck to overturn, and the tank holding 20,000 liters, equivalent to 5,284 gallons, of sulfuric acid poured over the cabin of the truck and into the surrounding area, causing a poisonous cloud to envelop the landscape. When authorities first arrived on the scene, they found two victims dead in the cab of the truck, Andres and his wife Carmen. They were both being slowly dissolved by the sulfuric acid, but since they were already deceased, authorities focused first on neutralizing the acid before it reached the nearby river, before they were going to remove the bodies. It took 3 hours to get in control of the acid before the bodies of Andres and Carmen could be recovered. It wasn't until a member of Spain's Civil Guard contacted Carmen's mother to tell her of the tragedy that she responded with, "And the boy?" Suddenly, authorities realized they should have been looking at 3 bodies if Juan Pedro was traveling with his parents. Or perhaps not a body at all. Maybe they were looking for a survivor. As soon as they found out that the couple had been traveling with a child, an extensive and exhaustive search was conducted within an 18-mile radius. They searched for days using trained dogs, helicopters, and the Civil Guard on foot. They checked beneath the truck and the sand and lime that they used to neutralize the acid. Yet a third body was never found at the scene or in the surrounding areas. Toys, clothing, and even a cassette of children's songs were found inside the truck, and various eyewitnesses had seen Juan Pedro as recently as 30 minutes before the accident. So where was he, and what had caused Andres to drive so erratically down a mountain? Considering how fast he was driving the truck he knew was carrying very hazardous material, it was initially suspected that his brakes had failed. However, upon further examination of the truck, the brakes were found to be in perfect condition. But oddly, the tachometer, an instrument that logs the working speed of the engine, essentially measuring the speed of the vehicle, showed that the truck, in the last 80 minutes of the trip, stopped 12 times, ranging from 1 second to 20 seconds each stop, and had varying speeds. But there were no traffic jams or accidents on that stretch of road at that time, and other drivers who had taken the same route as the family that night said there was no reason to stop once, let alone 12 times. So what was going on, and where was Juan Pedro? Several theories have emerged over the years. The first and most gruesome, if not logical, conclusion is that he was dissolved in the sulfuric acid, but scientists were quick to point out that this would have been impossible. Even if Juan Pedro had been completely submerged in the acid, there would have been something left of him. Bones, teeth, buttons from his clothing, plus the fact that his parents were in the crash, got covered in acid, and their remains were intact went against this theory. Then there are the theories that revolve around him surviving the crash, at least initially, which is not out of the realm of possibilities. The driver of the second truck survived, and because of the design of the truck, Juan Pedro was likely not wearing a seatbelt. He could have been thrown from the truck and survived. One such scenario follows that Juan Pedro was thrown from the truck, survived briefly, then tried to wash off the acid and clean his wounds in the nearby river, but passed away and was washed downstream, which would explain why his body was never found despite such an extensive search around the crash site. A different survival theory is that Juan Pedro lived through the crash and was picked up by a Good Samaritan, but died on the route to the hospital, and they panicked or just didn't want to answer questions about why they had a dead body in their car, so they disposed of the body. Then there are the theories that suggest Juan Pedro wasn't in the truck when it crashed. It's been suggested that he was abducted and that Andreas was chasing after the kidnappers. That would explain his erratic driving and why Juan Pedro's belongings were in the truck, but he wasn't. Another theory is that Andreas was a drug trafficker smuggling heroin or cocaine. Perhaps unwillingly, maybe Juan Pedro was kidnapped by drug traffickers who then forced Andreas to transport the drugs before they would return his son. The drug trafficking theory was given further weight in 1987 when the Spanish media reported that traces of heroin were found in the truck's trailer where the acid was being carried. However, Andreas had recently purchased the truck, so it's unknown who is responsible for the contraband. Then there's this baffling clue that could be a red herring. The man that was in the truck Andres ran off the road before the fatal crash claimed that he was assisted by a foreign couple, a man and a blonde-haired woman who claimed to be a nurse. Another pair of witnesses, two local shepherds, also reported to authorities that they had witnessed a white van pull up to the truck after the accident, and a man and a woman with blonde hair were seen removing a package from the truck. Could that package have been drugs? Could it have even been Juan Pedro that they were carrying out? If he's still alive, he would be in his 40s. Maybe he's still out there. Maybe somebody knows why Andreas was driving so erratically. Maybe someone can still solve this mystery. And that is the disappearance of Juan Pedro Martínez Gómez. And if you would like to hear more stories like that, please subscribe.